I'm an anxious person as well. And, I've spent many years trying to get rid of it, and I have spent many years hating it and not wanting to be anxious and doing everything I can to get my anxiety down to zero. The reality is my anxiety is never going to be zero. No one's is. Instead of putting all of my energy into getting rid of it, we find a way to live with it. It's a little bit like chronic pain, isn't it? We now know that with chronic pain, there's no real solutions to some of these problems.
Yeah.
How can I have a valued and meaningful life with the fact that my lower back hurts?
Yes.
So how can I have a meaningful life with the fact that anxiety is going to show up for me? It shows up for everyone. For me, it shows up a little bit more. And so what we do is we start to get to know our habits.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and this is, well, hello anxiety. In a world that often moves too fast, we're here to pause, breathe, and understand anxiety together. Each episode will explore practical strategies, share honest conversations, and uncover the science behind anxiety and well-being, all while creating a space where it's okay to not be okay. Let's continue this journey together. I am joined today by an incredible woman who has come highly recommended to me as a guest, and you will know exactly why once we get into the conversation. We've just had a bit of a chat off air, and we're talking about so much that we have in common in terms of the area of the behavioural therapy that we both love, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. And Jodie Wassner, my guest today, she is just such an expert in this area and has recently released a book actually titled Acceptance and Commitment Therapy with Children. It is such a powerful approach, and we're going to learn more about that with Jodie today. But just to give you a little bit more of a background, other than loving 80s music like me, Jodie was recently at an event. We were just talking about how our voices are a bit challenged sometimes if we do too much singing or talking. Jodie is the principal psychologist for Curious Kids Psychology, where you'll find that here in Melbourne and also in Sydney. She is a neuro-affirming educational and developmental psychologist, and she works extensively with neurodivergent kids and teens. Of course, we know she's an author, and I'm so thankful to you, Jodie, for having put your experience and expertise into a resource that we can all read and learn from. She's also a speaker with over 25 years experience supporting young people and their families, and she brings a beautiful blend of her own experience, her professional expertise, but also her own experience of neurodivergence, and that actually, of course, understandably fuels her passion for working with young people who are struggling with other challenges to their mental health or who are neurodivergent, experiencing, say, autism or ADHD or other types of neurodivergence. She's a big advocate of ACT like me, and it's just a pleasure to welcome you to the podcast today, Jodie. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I meant to say to you too before that Jodie is wearing this beautiful, it's a beautiful orange coloured, sort of like a glass kind of necklace. It's hard to describe, but I used to have exactly that in a beautiful green, and yeah, I might see if I can find it again. It looks so beautiful on you. So nice and colourful.
Look, I'll tell you what, I'm a big op shopper. Everything I own is
awesome.
Shop,
yeah,
including this necklace. And a little joke in my family is when I come home with something new, my husband says, "Oh, something else from Dolce & Gabbana."
I love it. And I'm sure he's delighted when you say, actually, no. Oh, it's so fun, isn't it? Isn't it so fun? It's such a treasure hunt when you go to the op shop. I always find if I go with something in mind, I'm unsuccessful. When I go with an open mind and just a big flicking through the racks and looking, sometimes you can get some absolute winning purchases,
Absolutely.
Can't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so fun. Such a fun thing to do. Well, look, thank you for joining me. And when we were planning on how we could take this conversation today in the time that we've got together, I know that your work with neurodivergent young people is really a huge passion of yours, as is using ACT, and you know how important a role that plays in the work that you do with young people. And so I really want to focus more on the latter, although I know there'll be some crossover. For listeners who are new to the podcast, huge welcome to you if you've just found us here, but also to listeners who have been listening along the journey, which is over 3 years now. I wonder if you could start by talking to us about ACT, because some listeners will be familiar, some will be like, what is this? And be sort of a bit curious about learning more. So can we start there?
Sure. So acceptance and commitment therapy, although it is, a therapy that we use, I kind of like to think of it more about a lifestyle, like a way of living. So a lot of the traditional therapies that we might have been trained in at uni and that we use, they're really focused on symptom reduction. So you come to therapy, you're anxious, you're depressed, etc. We put some strategies in place, and the goal of therapy is to reduce that anxiety or reduce that depression. And a lot of those therapies are really, really effective. ACT does it a little bit differently. We really look at the way we view feelings, the way we view thoughts, some of the shoulds we tell ourselves about the way things are supposed to be. And we focus on our own mind's response to those things when they show up. And so rather than avoiding difficult feelings like anxiety or sadness, we talk about carrying those with us, right? Difficulty is inevitable. So I'm going to feel anxious and I'm going to carry it with me while still moving in a value direction. So a huge part of ACT is identifying what's really important to you. And am I willing to sit with a bit of difficulty in the pursuit of what that is?
Yes. This morning something came up on YouTube. My daughter was watching YouTube before school. Yes, I'm one of those parents. No, it's just something that she was looking at. And it was Alex Honnold, who is the fellow that climbed El Capitan. It's like a 300-metre sheer rock face. He climbed it as a free solo climber with no ropes. So his life was very much at risk. And I was watching it and I was thinking, gee, this is something I'm going to bring into, and I've shared that story before, but I'd forgotten to bring it back into my work more recently, is like what motivates somebody to overcome the fear and anxiety of that in pursuit of some sort of a goal. And it just got me thinking through a really big ACT lens when I was watching this little brief snippet about that accomplishment. But tell us more about how you can help young people to work out what is important to them so that they've got more of a willingness to kind of take their anxiety with them in the direction of what really matters.
It's an incredibly good question, and it's a very long and complicated answer. But, I think before I dive into that, one of the things that I think is really important to point out is when we move towards something valued, we have to really be willing to do it. It has to be valuable for us. So I'm thinking this guy, I've forgotten his name, who climbed the big
Alex,
rock.
yes.
Alex, right? So it was really, really important to Alex. There was something in him that was just made it that, you know what, no matter what, I'm prepared to overcome these obstacles. And sometimes when we work with kids, we're invariably working with their parents. And often a parent will come into the therapy room and we will hear the parents' goals. I really want her to be able to do that by herself. I'd really like my child to be X. And then we try and we might do some exposure and try and get the young person to do what the parent has said they need to do. And we get no traction because we don't have any buy-in from the kid. And so one of the things we do in ACT is really early on, we sit with that young person and we find out what's really important to you. And we can do it via looking in different life areas. So in terms of friends, let's say the young person is really, really keen to make some friends, but perhaps they've been struggling. And so instead of diving in and telling them, well, you should try X, Y, and Z, we spend a little bit of time focusing on what a good friendship would look like for them. And when we do values activities, we can do it two ways. We can sort of think about, if I was the best friend I could possibly be, how would I like to be? And we encourage that young person to think about how they should be with their friends if they were their best version of themselves. I want to be kind. I want to be fun. It doesn't have to be serious. I want to be funny. I want people who like me for the real me. And we can also switch that over to when you're looking for friends. What kind of values do you see in friends? In fact, one of my favorite activities I do with neurodivergent kids and teens, because often they really struggle, and moving into year 7, into high school, often they're going to a new school and they've often had this really long history of being bullied or really struggling to make connections. and they say, new school, I want to make friends and blah, blah, blah. But invariably, they might go into the same old patterns that can put the other kids off. And it's really important to help them to reflect on what's happening. So a values activity I might do with them would be something like, all right, so you're starting a new school in January. I want you to imagine that I turn up to your school in about April and I interview 3 random kids in year 7. And I say to them, hey, do you know that new guy, Tom? What's he like? What do you hope they'd say about you? And so often the kids will say something like, oh, he's really nice, he's really funny. And then I can dig a little bit. So I can say something like, do you hope they see you as someone that disrupts the class a lot? No. They see you as someone who's hardworking. And through that, I start to take my notes. I love using the whiteboard and colours, and we sort of get this big map. If I was this awesome year 7 person,
yes,
how would people perceive me? And only then can we start to look at what behaviours match that.
Yes.
So what are my behaviours that are moving me away from being that kind of person? And what's the stuff I'm doing that's moving me towards that?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh, it is such it makes so much sense that that's where you start. How do you then go from, once the child has the understanding of kind of like, this is the map out, this is what, when you rock up at the school, and I can just picture that, 3 random children to interview, please. What is the next step? Because it's, there's probably a number of directions you could go in, different approaches you could take or different things to work on. How would you know where to start?
Okay. Well, I guess it really depends on what are some of the obstacles here.
Yeah.
So I know we've just used an example of making friends, but we can really do it with any of our goals.
Yeah.
What's going wrong here? And often anxiety is getting in the way. The other thing that can be getting in the way are the shoulds that we tell ourselves.
Yes.
I should be able to do this. I'm old enough. I should know how to do that. And particularly from parents. So a huge amount of my work is with parents, getting them to challenge some of their own shoulds. And this is a really big part of ACT, right? Because particularly in Western society, we have lots of beliefs around, well, I should be happy and I shouldn't feel anxious. And one of the main principles of ACT is that if we try too hard to not have difficult feelings, I shouldn't be anxious, I don't want this anxiety, then it grows a lot bigger.
Yes.
And it's that struggle with I don't like my anxiety that causes the true suffering. So what we talk about is we distinguish between that initial difficult feeling. So I feel a little bit anxious because I'm about to approach a new friend. That's anxiety provoking. We expect that, right? This is good information that I'm anxious. It shows me that it's important to me.
Yes.
So I'm going to carry this anxiety and I'm still going to walk towards this person that I'd like to be friends with. And if we can keep that level of anxiety at that, all right, this is okay, acceptance, right? I should expect this level of anxiety, then we can hopefully keep it at a level where we can still function and move towards our values.
Yeah.
However, if anxiety shows up and we start to attach unhelpful meaning to it.
Yeah.
So, for example, approach a potential friend, I'm starting to feel a little bit anxious. And then what if my mind says to me something like, what if your face goes red? What if you wee your pants? What if you do something terrible? And it's these thoughts that it's attaching that extra level of meaning that's doing the damage. And so one of the things I love about kids is that they're still developing their beliefs about the world and how things should be. And so when we get in early and teach them these strategies, hopefully we're setting them up for life.
Yes.
And I guess the goal is, often when you say to parents, what do you want for your kids? And 99% will say, I just want my kids to be happy. Of course, we want our kids to be happy, but it's a trap.
Yeah.
And what we'd really, really like to have parents say is, I want my kid to be able to manage difficulty as it shows up.
Yes.
Difficulty in the world and difficulty in my feelings.
Yes, because it is part and parcel with being human. There are, and at every stage of life, and even though the challenges at different ages can be bigger or smaller depending on what you're going through, but it's the way we relate to what we're going through that is so important. And what you said before about the struggle, because I was thinking back when you started talking, Jodie, about some of the different approaches and the symptom reduction approaches. And I've had years and years and years of therapy, and I remember that I had some thought management strategies that I was learning that I just couldn't make work. And then I'd be sort of a bit hard on myself because I'm like, okay, I really trust the person I'm working with. He was absolutely incredible, saved my life and changed my life, but he was not working with ACT. And I think that's why when I learned about ACT and started training in ACT and applying it to myself and sharing it, that I'm just so passionate about it, because it's a very, very different approach. But he used to say to me, in a kind and compassionate way, it's only anxiety. And I would just sometimes sort of like be baffled as to how can you say this? This is just so life limiting, and it feels crippling and overwhelming and sickening and just like such a big handbrake in my life. But over the years of working with him and over the years of learning more and understanding, it's like you said, it's not the anxiety itself. When it's understood, it can be viewed as for what it is. It's the struggle with it when it comes up. Can we speak a bit more to that? Because I'm sure that there are parents listening who are thinking, well, number one, don't ever say to me it's only anxiety. I will clock you one. But just to kind of, I guess, talk a little bit more into this idea that the anxiety is one thing, how we relate to it is very different. And perhaps if we start there, and then I might like to sort of lead into, well, how can we sort of have that almost slightly curious approach to what comes up for us when we're anxious? How can we sort of like build towards this ability to drop the struggle? So let's start with this idea, please, of how we relate to it and how important that is.
Okay. So human brains are problem solvers, right? We want to solve problems as quickly and efficiently as we can. Parent brains definitely want to do that for their kids. So when a kid says something like, I'm scared, as a parent, we don't want our kid to be scared. Yeah. So we might say something like, there's nothing to be scared of. And although our intention as a parent is to try and help the young person feel better, often they feel dismissed or that there's something wrong with them. And this can set up a lifelong pattern of avoidance of difficulties. So we need to start as parents, as adults in children's lives, using language that is accepting of difficulty and including difficult feelings. So let's look at anxiety, for example. I'm an anxious person as well. And, you know, I've spent many years trying to get rid of it, and I have spent many years hating it and not wanting to be anxious and doing everything I can to get my anxiety down to zero. The reality is my anxiety is never going to be zero. No one's is, right? And so instead of putting all of my energy into getting rid of it, we find a way to live with it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like chronic pain, isn't it? We now know that with chronic pain, you know, there's no real solutions to some of these problems.
Yeah.
How can I have a valued and meaningful life with the fact that my lower back hurts?
Yes.
So how can I have a meaningful life with the fact that anxiety is going to show up for me? It shows up for everyone. For me, it shows up a little bit more. And so what we do is we start to get to know our habits. And one of the expressions I love to use with kids is a worry habit. They all know what habits are. And we talk about what my personal worry habit is. And what you're actually doing there is you're helping the kids step outside from the anxiety and notice it.
Yes.
So, for example, I'll always share one of my worry habits, which is I hate being late.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So I've got a worry habit about being late. And so, you know, my example might be on a Sunday morning if I'm going somewhere with my family and we're really not running late and it's somewhere where it's pretty casual, we don't have to be on time, I'm probably going to be the person that's going to start causing stress and fights in the family because my anxiety is building.
Yes.
So what I can do is I can step outside and I can say, this is nothing to do with whether or not we're on time. This is my worry habit that's being really, really loud.
Yes.
So when we work with a kid and we can coin what your worry habit is, it becomes talking about the process of the worry rather than whether or not the worry is true.
Yes.
And I think a lot of traditional psychology, cognitive strategies, they focus on proving, using rational thoughts. So let's say the young person is scared of swimming.
Yes.
We might use evidence to say, well, you've not drowned before, or, there's no crocodiles in the pool, or, we'll
you can touch the bottom, or yes.
Get them in the pool. Whereas in ACT, I don't even engage with whether or not there's crocodiles or whether or not you're a swimmer. I just go, okay, that thought's shown up because that's your worry habit. I've heard this lots of times before.
Yes. Oh, and it is such a different way of approaching it, because you're not, like you say, you're not looking at the content of the thought and whether it's true or not. You're really just recognizing it for what it is, which is just one of these little problem-solving ideas that's cropping up. And like you say, also that you're helping the young person to develop this recognition, this ability to notice, oh, I'm doing that again. So it's not about trying to kind of solve for it. It's about recognizing it, seeing it for what it is, and then obviously in other conversations, helping them move forward to do whatever it might be, whether it's getting in the pool or learning to swim, because that's important. And you've already established that that's important by working with values.
Exactly.
Yes.
It just reminds me, because my first few years working as a psychologist, I worked as a school psychologist for many years, which I absolutely loved.
Yes.
And I remember there was this one kid this year 8 kid, and she would knock on my door every lunchtime. And, so she'd come in and I'd follow up on what had happened yesterday. So is everything solved with Sophie now? And she'd say, Sophie, what do you mean? No. And it was a new problem. And every day there was something else.
Yes.
And I think it was around that time that I was starting to think, I need to look beyond. I need to find something that looks at the process. Because every lunchtime I was, the day before I solved the problem with Sophie, and then I tried to solve the problem with Lily.
Yes.
And instead we sort of switched to, hey, I've noticed this is what happens with you.
Yes.
Which is why ACT is so good for those classic worry warts.
Yes, it is. Jodie, there is so much wisdom in what you are sharing, and gosh, I know there are parents who are going, yes, this is something that I know could really make a difference in my family. So we're going to pause here for a moment and we're going to pick things up for a part 2. So if you are really enjoying this conversation, you are not going to want to miss what we've got to talk about next, which will be ready for you in the very, very next episode of the podcast. I will see you then. Thank you for sharing this time with me on Well, Hello Anxiety. Remember, understanding anxiety is the first step to managing it. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Take things one moment at a time. Focus on what you can control and know that you are not alone on this journey. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and I'll meet you right back here next week.